Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this portfolio advice session at London College of Communication. We'll be talking about two courses, film and television and film practice. We're really pleased that you've chosen to spend some time with us at this presentation this afternoon. It's good to see you, even if we can't. It's a beautiful, crisp winter's day in London. I hope wherever you are, it is as well too. And we hope we can make your online visit worthwhile. My name is Bill Bradley, and I'm the Academic Admissions Manager at LCC, as well as being the admissions tutor and a senior lecturer in live events and television. And today I'm joined by Lamprini, who is billed here as our graduate assistant. Lamprini will be assisting in the final stages of this presentation, and will also be adding her expertise to other sections, as well as helping me out with the questions at the end of the presentation. So welcome, Lamprini.
Hello.
So the courses that we're covering today are, as I said, BA Honours Film and Television, BA Honours Film Practice. I won't do you the discourtesy of reading out what it says on the screen. I'm sure you can see what that says and digest it. I think the two outlines on the slide do demonstrate the differences between the two, and it's not really the purpose of today's session to dwell on that, but I think it's important for you to appreciate the differences, most especially in what they ask for in their portfolios, and that's what we'll get to later on. But just to briefly outline some of the key differences that you can be aware of, starting with BA Film Practice. This course gives you the opportunity to focus on specific film roles and departments from the beginning of year two. So in the process of consolidating your first year learning, you'll be deciding what specialist areas of film you want to move towards, and you'll continue to build your skills and your understanding in these areas as your degree progresses. And then in year two, you would move specifically into those roles. Whereas on BA Film and Television, it's much more generalized. You'll be encouraged to develop a much broader range of creative, technical, production skills throughout the whole of the 3 years of study. And this obviously reflects, we hope, current demands in the world of movie image forms and distributing platforms. I'm thinking here of platforms such as Netflix, Prime TV, free streaming, etc. These will be your target employers, and these will be the kind of opportunities available to you once you graduate from film and television. Another source of difference between the two, film practice focuses extremely specifically on making drama, documentary, and experimental films. Kind of in the tradition of the film industry and independent filmmaking practice. Whereas film and television, on the other hand, addresses a broader range of formats, such as factual drama, entertainment programs that can be shot in studios or on location, and would normally require multi-camera operations, as opposed to the single camera filmmaking operation. A couple of other things. As it's not really our intention to dwell too much on stuff you've probably already heard before, just a couple of other things. Whereas for film and TV, work placement is currently an option in year 3. On film practice, it's built in to your second year of study. That's a difference. And finally, in terms of contextual studies, whereas film practice draws exclusively on the study of film to incorporate key movements and practitioners in filmmaking, not surprisingly, film and TV has a much broader remit, and it allows you to undertake reading and research around television, film, related production, and communication contexts. So that's just a brief insight into the difference between the two courses that we're covering today, just in case you were curious and had only specifically previously looked at one. So moving on, let's move on now to the courses that aren't being covered today, and have a quick discussion about that, because there may be other courses that you're interested in that we're not going to talk about, and we're not neglecting you in that respect, but there is something you can do. So if the course is not covered today, do please use the link on this slide as a starting point for looking at what to include in their portfolios. Again, I'll pause here a second for you to give you time to either photograph the slide, or for you traditionalists like myself to copy the link down by hand. Let's keep pen and paper going, shall we? And the link is arts.ac.uk/portfolio. Okay, but also please do go front and find our London College of Communication YouTube uploads, and you'll see a multitude of presentations concerning portfolio advice for a range of courses. So if we're not talking, if you want advice on other courses, that's your two sources of information. However, for today's purposes, let's move on to what we're looking for. So what are we looking for in your film practice and film and television portfolios? Well, I have to say at this point, we like to think of a portfolio as a window. It sounds really cheesy, but it's a window into your own unique world through which you're showing us and we can see your skills, your personality, and your potential. It's a collection of work that demonstrates how your creativity has developed over a period of time and brought you to where you are now in your career development. So the portfolio then, it should radiate you, really. That's what we're hoping. In this respect, it allows you to express your own individual personality. Just imagine how dreary it would be if we were all presenting our views of the world in exactly the same way. We're looking for your individuality to shine out in your portfolio. Let me just remind you at this point, because I'm not going to say it again, but we do look at your portfolio in conjunction with your personal statement on your application form. So it's important your personality and potential shines through each of those. And that's probably a bit late telling you because you possibly already applied to us. But if you haven't, please remember on your personal statement, we'd like to see your personality and potential shine through. Okay, so in terms of portfolios, what does film and television, first of all, in no particular order, what does film and television ask for? Well, the information on this slide is taken from the website, and it's the website that informs us that the portfolio for this course will be a maximum of 10 images. Just the word here is images. That's the key word on that statement. And what do we mean by that? Well, we are going to come back to what that means in a minute or so. So bear with us and let's just go through the rest of the requirements first before we redefine this term images. So we can see the next requirement is for at least 1 2-minute durational piece. And it's important you don't feel restricted just to one. Please feel free to submit more. In fact, I would actively encourage that, especially if it allows you to demonstrate a variety of genre or experimentation, or even your technical development or the contributions you make to different pieces of work. Don't feel that you're constrained to just showing one piece of moving image out of your 10 images. So what we're looking for is, what have you contributed? What part did you play in, or what role did you play in the putting together of a piece of work? Were you the director? Were you the cinematographer? Were you in charge of sound, etc., etc.? So in this respect, please note the third point on the slide. We have preference for you not to submit show reels, because from our experience, these don't always do justice to your work. Offering longer pieces allows us to see the narrative build, and it allows us to gauge how you, or the contribution you made in a collaborative project, dealt with the process of building and retaining narrative, for instance. And this is something that shorter cuts haven't always been able to show us. So that's why we don't ask for a show reel. There's a real preference for you to move away from show reels and into shorter moving image. Again, this leads us on to the next point, the next slide, sorry, the next point on the slide, which is to add a concise, and that means brief but informative. That's what the word concise means. Brief and informative contextual statement that clearly outlines and explains your role or your roles within the work that you've uploaded. And that means all the work. So if you upload more than 2 or 3 pieces of moving image, then we need to know what role you played in each of those. And again, we'll return to this later in the slide, so don't go anywhere. The final point on this slide relates back to the question of what constitutes an image. Now, I'm going to invite Lamprini, if she doesn't mind, to offer her own highly polished explanation of this. I know when to defer to the experienced. Lamprini, welcome to the presentation.
Well, hi everyone. So we're just gonna explain a little bit what all this requirements. It is you're applying for film and television, so we would like to see scenes from particular films that you have produced. And when we say film, we don't mean there will be a 2-hour long film. Even if you have a 2-hour long film, we'd like to see maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute of a film. So that's the when we say maximum of 10 images, then what that means is that you might be interested to for cinematography, for example. So if you have any stills or if you have any photography that you like to show us, definitely include that. But within that 10 images, we would like to see some sketchbook work, some storyboards maybe. And that could be as well, maybe you would like to include as well scripts, for example. So there are a lot of different things that you can do when it comes to the portfolio, especially for film and television. But remember to keep everything within the requirement that it is for each course. But that's the that's what when it comes to. I agree with Bill, as said, use a variety of films that you like, projects that you like to show us, but series are not preferable just because we doesn't give us the right amount of time to appreciate all the work that you put in. And if you include some stills from the films, or even if you did maybe the art design or the set, and you would like to show us a little bit about the progress, use that kind of images to showcase your work then. Hope that's okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Lamprini. That's actually really useful. Thank you. And just to reiterate, actually, the bullet point there at the top of the page, top of the slide, maximum of 10 images. Remember that I've opened up applications in the past where I've just had 10 still images from their movies, and that's been a big misinterpretation of what's required. Hopefully Lamprini's explanation opens up a world of options for you in terms of the 10 images you can upload for film and television. But do remember, one of those images could be, if you wanted it to be, the contextual statement as a whole, or you could include the contextual statement some other way. But the fact is the contextual statement will be a very important part of your application, so that we can see what role it is you played, we can see what it meant to you, we can see how you feel you did with it. We'll talk about that in a second. So thanks, Lamprini, that's helpful. So as a form of summary of the explanations that we just gave, let's remember the following. The durational work will be an opportunity for you to demonstrate not just your technical awareness and abilities, but also your appreciation of the importance of the narrative. That's what we like to see in the work. Okay? And this can be done through one or more moving image. And don't forget, we like to see research work, sketchbooks, storyboards, etc. So if you're going to be the next Kubrick, you'll appreciate the need for research. So let's see how you've approached work in the past and how you attempt to approach work in the future. Moving on to the contextual statements. Again, as I've emphasized, this is a really important part of your application. It's something that's often not submitted, and too often it's submitted, but with far too little demonstration of engagement. And that is another key word. We look for your engagement in the whole process of your application. So it's probably not just enough just to say, well, in that video, I was the sound recorder. This doesn't help us at all in building a picture of your skills or your engagement in the overall production. So please offer slightly more. It could be that we can see your role through the credits on a video, for instance, and that's helpful enough, but it'd be much more helpful if you could offer that little bit more information in the statement. And please remember, we positively encourage you to include any reflections you may have. For instance, because we don't always need to see your best work. Were you happy with the finished product? It could have been a piece of experimental work you did, and it didn't quite go as you expected, but you were kind of pleased with it. So you'd like to show us how you experimented, and perhaps in your reflection, just say, this is what I might do differently next time. So your contextual statement gives you that opportunity to talk about and reflect upon the work that you submitted, whilst being kept brief, of course. I think that's the key there, getting the information there briefly. And finally, if you're submitting more than one durational piece, place the one you're most proud of at the forefront. And don't feel restricted to showing only the work that you produced as part of a college assignment, for instance. Feel free to show, and we'd love to see your independently produced work, because this demonstrates, again, that word experimentation. It's a key part of growing in an environment like LCC, how you experiment. Industries don't evolve without experimentation. So remember, if you're doing independent work that's not constrained by certain task requirements, because it's your own, then that's your opportunity. So let's see some of your independent work. And hopefully what it will demonstrate is how much you love what you're doing. It'd be great to see that in your portfolios. So I think that's a very succinct, but I hope clear view of the kind of stuff we're looking for film practice, for film and television. I apologize. Moving on to the requirements of film practice, please remember that different course teams have different preferences. There isn't always a parity of wishes from one course to another. And I think this may become evident when you see that there's slightly different requirements from film practice. So let's have a look at that. So in terms of film practice, there are a couple of distinct differences between the requirements of film and television and the requirements of this course. But the principle behind the production of your portfolio remains the same: to demonstrate your technical skills as well as your approach or your engagement, is that word again, and your ability to appreciate narrative and research. And it also requires self-reflection in the form of a contextual statement. And we'll get to that on the next slide. So what the web page asks for is a single durational contribution of 3 minutes maximum. They clearly stipulate this can be work produced on your course or work you've made independently. And they also highlight a preference for not to see show reels. So as both courses prefer not to see show reels. More of that in a minute as well. One significant difference between what the film practice team stipulate and what film and television state is the option of submitting a self-bio in the form of a video. And this will be submitted as part of the 3-minute durational work. If I were to suggest a durational time limit for a self-bio, how would 30 seconds sound? What could you tell us about yourself in 30 seconds? I think I'll leave that with you. But it is encouraged. It's not a compulsory part of the application, but it is encouraged. So as you can see, you can also submit a further 9 still images. And you can add a URL that takes us to full versions of your work. And again, at this point, I'm going to hand over to Lampredi for her experiential knowledge and explanation of that particular piece of information.
So just again, a quick explanation on this. There are a lot of different things, and especially if you apply for film practice and film and television, it confuse you. So again, make sure that you read everything and you you submit the right portfolio for its right course. The difference with the film and television here, from the film and television for film and practice when it comes to portfolio, is that you have that maximum 3 minutes of film and sound work. So that means that all the work that you want to show us, it needs to be in this 3 minutes video. as one file. So even if it's film work that you've done, even if it's sound work that you've done, make sure to include that in this 3 minutes film. Again, when I say no to show reels, it doesn't give us enough time to, it's too hectic, or it could be too all over the place. That it doesn't give us the right time to actually appreciate what you've done and see your skills. So we keep saying lots of show reels, but we will say just make sure, you know, if you want to include in show reel that badly, make sure that it makes sense and it has a rhythm and it's coherent and it shows your skills and your ideas. So that's what we mean with the 3 minutes. So with the self bio, you can also include that. If you would like to include it in the 3 minutes, it could be like an introduction to your work, for example. Think of that. It's like you presenting your work by explaining what who you are and what you've been up to and what we are going to see and how your ideas and passions developed in projects. If you're worried of showing as yourself, you don't have to. You can just speak over, you know, the introduction point, or you can find other ways. So it is really open to you how you would like to present your work. And when you're submitting, you will choose specific work to submit in this 3 minutes work. And if you want to show us more, make sure that the URL that you're using under the video, that it will let us know where we're going. So basically, you have the first 30 seconds to a minute or so. It's up to you how long you want to have the first scene from a film that you produce. That might be 20 minutes, it could be 4 minutes, it could be 5 minutes, but you only have that 30 seconds or more to present a part of your film. So when it comes to URL, let us know the title and then include the URL. So we know that if we click this, we're going to go and see that part of the film. It's really important to include roles. And as Bill mentioned before, it's really important to let us know what you've done, but it's not enough to just say that I was director. We need to know just a little bit, a sentence of what exactly you've done and how you moved along the project. So it could be I was director of photography, and I tried different types of lighting, and I thought for this particular film and scene, that type of lighting worked best. That's kind of the thing that we're looking when it comes to roles. And if you have credits, great. But again, we will come later on to talk about the submission process, and I'll explain more a little bit of what you can do through this process. That was what I had to add.
Contextual statement. So again, I think we've mentioned this a couple of times. You should, as much as you possibly can, in your contextual statement, not just, as Lamprioni just said, not just outline the roles you've undertaken in the production of your work, you include in your 3 minute collage, but also tell the team what role or roles in particular you might see yourself moving towards in the future. And as I've said, this is an important part of the film practice consideration because, as I said, by the beginning of year 2, you will be identifying your preference in terms of, would I like to move into cinematography? Would I like to move into being a director, producer? Is sound my particular skill set? So what you could in your contextual statement, you could outline your current thoughts on where you believe you are at the moment, to give the team a better understanding of your aspirations. And of course, these may change. As I said, you know, the second year of your course is 2 years away now. We're looking to the future. And your aspirations may change in the interim. But having that idea at the very beginning of the process will allow the team a better understanding of you and exactly where you're coming from and where you feel you would like to go to. So do bear that in mind, and do remember that piece of information about the second year of a course, where you will move your study much closer towards your chosen specialist role, and naturally your current thoughts could change between now and then. Okay. Moving on then, just to say, and this is for everybody, please just have a quick read of the points on the slide. Again, I'm not going to read them out to you. It's just really important that your personality shines through. The heading here is personality is paramount, and it really is, because as part of the whole process, including the contextual statement and previously in your personal statement that you wrote for your application, we need to see you shining out, okay? And that's paramount. Also, when you're producing your portfolio, please remember the audience for whom you're producing it. And that seems like a really obvious statement to make, but you'd be surprised how many portfolios I see and have to map onto other courses because they don't map onto the course they've applied to. A good example of this would be when I get applications to, for instance, photography, and we look at the portfolio, and it seems to be leaning completely towards documentary photography and photojournalism. So we kind of feel that the portfolio that you've produced would be much more applicable to another course. So remember who you're producing this portfolio for and the purpose of producing it, and ask yourself the questions you can see on the slide. So what does a professional approach mean? Well, basically, is it well laid out? Does it feel considered and presented in a consistent way? Does it show you in your best light? And do your skills, your aspirations shine through the whole thing, both visually and in a contextual statement? That would demonstrate to us a professional approach. Is there evidence of process and development within the content? For instance, do your storyboards reflect the finished article? So if you show us a piece of film and you show us a storyboard that you built before producing the film, is there a reflection there? Can we see the progress? And similarly, does the inclusion of pages from your sketchbooks add anything to the value of your portfolio? And the last point for me is really telling. Has your portfolio fulfilled its purpose to the best of your ability? And to be honest with you, that's all anyone can ask of you, isn't it? Is to submit a portfolio that you strongly believe is fit for purpose. Now, I'm sure Lamprini would have lots to add to this, but in a minute she's going to be taking over. In fact, now it's on this slide that Lamprini is going to take over to talk to you about some of the more generic things, but how to apply them to these courses. Lamprini.
Thank you, Bill. So we're talking about the age requirement for each course when it comes to film and television film practice. And you can see that even though they're dealing with the same thing, same format and medium, they still require different things because each course they specialize in different areas. When I say areas, is that one is more specialist and the other one is more experimental in a sense. When it comes to portfolios, you need to find the right balance of what the content of your portfolio, what you should include. And we want to see imperfection. We're not expecting you to be professionals because you're coming to study. So make sure that your portfolio shows you. We don't want to see something that it doesn't show your personality, but also because it's you come to university, we want to see how you develop your ideas and we want to see how you evolve through a project. So process is really, really important to see, and it's as important as the final pieces, because that's how we are going to understand how you move from one idea to another, or something that it didn't work, but it really helped you to move forward to your project. So that's what we mean with that when we say don't be embarrassed of imperfection, because we would like to see these mistakes that they weren't actually mistakes. It's just it helps you to move on and realize that, oh, that doesn't work, so let's move on to the other thing. A lot of times mistakes are the ones that make the final cut. So that's the one. We want to see research development. So if you're using, Bill mentioned Stanley Kubrick, it could be anyone else that you might be interested in to use. It could be a photographer that inspires you. It could be anyone. But we like to know who it is, because that will show us your research and how you went about your idea. So if you're using images or any text that is not yours specifically, but from different people, make sure to credit the artist, and that will help you as well. We will help us to understand as well your research. The most important thing is to show us what you love. It is. I know we kind of forget this when we show your work. It's like it goes into really specific that I need to show this and this and this. But remember that just don't assume what we want to see. We want to see exactly what you want us to see, and your point of view and who you really are, and what you want to do in the future, how you want to progress through coming to university and studying the course, your passion, your interests. So work that you can talk about it, you are confident, that you're really proud, and don't just fill the gaps with something that if you think there's, oh, I don't have enough material, I like to see less than just see these extra thing that you added just to fill the empty space. Because we understand that we can see the difference of you talking so much about one work and you paying so much attention for one piece of work, and then just present something and say, oh, I also did this. We would know that this is just filling the gap. Just it's really important that you show work that you like and you're proud. And even though we're going to talk about the digital submission and the portfolios, you still be able to talk about your work. So it's really important that you can write simple and clear, and just tell us exactly what you want us to say, what you want us to see. So we're going to talk a little bit about format. So in both courses, the requirements, yeah, they are different, but they are dealing with the same thing. So remember that you should check again and again the different requirements. Make sure that you submit the right portfolio for the right course, and have like a checklist next to you when you're about to submit your portfolio, and say, okay, I've done my contextual statement, and that's up. I've created my video, my 3-minute video, or I have this 2 to 3 minutes or even more for film and television that I have from 3 different projects. And you can do it like a checklist that I uploaded this and that's gone, that's done. And then before you click the button submit, make sure that you have gone through all of this and you're okay to go. Opt for what suits the subject area. Bill mentioned this, and it's really important because we want to see why you coming to why you choose the course that you're applying. And if you show us something completely different, we might see that, oh, you're interested in something else. And for example, if you apply for film and we see no film work, only photography, for example, we might consider that, oh, you're interested in the photography course. If you show us only in more extravagant difference in courses, is that if you show us only paintings or illustrations, which we had that in the past, people applying for film practice or film and television and show us only paintings and drawings, it's not, we're gonna assume that you're probably interested in something else. So make sure that you opt for what suits the subject area, and you don't have to limit yourself as much. If you're interested in cinematography, of course we want to still see the stills, and we want to see photographs that you've taken that really help you to work on your project. But if you don't include any film, which will be difficult for us to make a decision, but make sure to mention that I'm interested in cinematography, for example. But I will definitely, I mean, if you're applying, even if you have one film, we want to see that. Don't be scared of just not having enough. Just make sure that what to compile everything that you have, check what is best for you, what do you think that's the strongest work that I've done, and just let us know what you've been up to, basically. And if you are, for example, you want to show us a set that you build, and which is also is part of the courses you'll be doing, is building sets, especially film practice. I've seen some amazing sets. So if you're interested in that area, we want to see pictures of that. So just again, just have that checklist to make sure that everything works fine, and the format of your portfolio that you choose. For example, if you use your contextual statements, make sure that there's no spelling mistakes. Just run by somebody else to see if it makes sense, if they understand what you're talking about, and then just say, okay, I'm ready, I submit. So we move on to another aspect of your portfolio that you need that is really, really important. I'm sure a lot of you might have lots of different work. You might have so many things that you want to show us, and we would be so happy to see everything, to see what you've been working on. But unfortunately, we're not able to due to the time that we have to go through and see each application. So we would like to see your favorite work. So think about like the 10 best moments of your life, if we could say that. They don't have to be 10. I'm just using a specific number, but think about how you might have 2 projects that are your favorite work that you said, I really enjoyed it, and I think I've done a great work on that, and I need to show that. We want to see that too. That 2 projects will be enough for us to see what you've been up to. Yeah, we would like to see a collection of varied projects, especially when it comes to film, and especially on that level when it comes to a BA degree. We want to see experimentation. So when you choose your work, maybe choose something that it shows that experimentation, that you worked in the production team, maybe you work as a director, or you try cinematography and lighting, camera work. You don't have to show us all of them, but if you show us just a different roles that you've tried, that will make us understand that you've tried some things. And especially for film practice, you might just tell us that I realized I'm happy to experiment even more, but I realized I'm more interested in production, or I'm more interested in set design, or right as a script writer. So it really depends what you when you want to show us, basically what you want us to see and understand of yourself, your interest, your work. But you really need to edit it down. You really need to be decisive and say, this is not as good as that one, so I'm going to use this 30 seconds instead of that 40 seconds, for example. And make sure that the work that you're using are showing your skills as well. So again, it's so important to only include work that you can talk about. If you can talk about it, you can write about, you can be, you explain it and be really comfortable about it. So make sure to be something that is just your best work that you've done. And again, don't fill the gaps. If it's just you think that it's not enough, it's better not to add something that you're not comfortable with, or you're not really proud of it. So just a quick run through. I said that we're going to mention something about the process, and that's the submitting a digital portfolio. I'm sure you're probably aware of it by now. A lot of universities will be using that process due to the current situation. We've been using it for almost 3 years now as LCC, and it's working great. And it follows the same rules as of a physical portfolio. So it gives you also that option to be more open and more experimental with it instead of just sticking, on a two-dimensional aspect. And again, you're doing film, so it will help you a lot to show your work by uploading a digital portfolio. So follow again the guidance provided in the email. If you're applying for both film practice and film and television, you will receive 2 different emails. So make sure to check. And when it is about to upload your portfolio, you need to upload 2 different portfolios. And it's the same if you decide to apply for another course in the UAL. So just for each course that you apply, you have different emails sent to you. You can include images, audio, and video. That will, it depends the format according to the course that you're applying. So as we said on film practice, you have to compile everything when it comes to audio and video into one 3-minute up to 3-minute video, whereas in film and television you can use I would say 2 minutes, and maybe again, even if it's unlimited in a sense, but up to 3 minutes work for film and television will be best, because it will give us the option to see as much as we can. So just make sure that if you're using hyperlinks, one thing that I want to mention here is if you just upload a link to your website or your Vimeo or everything, and nothing else, that will be a no instantly, because we can see that you haven't paid attention and effort to create a portfolio, and that's really important. That doesn't mean that you can't include links as something extra, but that shouldn't be your main work. Your main work should be on your portfolio that you submitted to us through the platform called Pebblebud.
If you do include hyperlinks, please make sure that we can access them. Lots of people produce them and we can't access them because they're password protected. So please make sure that they're not.
Pebblebud is the platform that we use to submit your portfolio. Think of it as a blog. It gives you the option to upload audio, video, images. You have the option to use text, and you can use different fonts and different. It could be bold, different colors on your text. So it's quite open on what you can do. The most important thing is to check again on the website. When you receive that email, for example, they will have a lot of different information that will direct you to our website. We will have all the information about Pebblebud, and it has all the size of the files that you can upload, what kind of files you can upload. For example, for film, it could be MP3, could be MP4 for sound, and it could be a lot of different types of moving image, and as well as images. It could be like JPEG, and also with audio. So make sure that the files that you choose to upload, they're according to what the information on your email and on the website. So you won't have the issue of struggling to say, oh, I can't upload that file because it's too big or too small. If you're using images, something that I forgot to mention, make sure that they're in high resolution, so we won't miss any details. That goes again as well for your videos. Just they don't have to be too big, but as files, so to have the best, like high HD or ultra HD kind of resolution, but we like to be able to see clearly what's happening. So that's your Pebblebud is the tool that you're using to submit your work. It will have different tabs according to the course that you're applying, that you can you can see clearly this is film and television or film practice, and you can click on each one of them and upload your work. You don't have to submit it straight away. You can go back to it, if you want to find out a little bit more about what else you can add, if you want to remove some things, and when you're ready, you just click the button that says submit. You will have support throughout the whole process. We will have a specific team that can help you with if you have any IT problems, if you can't log in, but also to support you if you have any other issues with your, the process.
And just to say that in terms of the Pebble Pad requirements, as Manfrini said, all that information will be sent to you with a request for the upload, so you'll be able to read through that. And from my particular role as the admissions manager for the college, one of the things I tell everybody, whoever I meet at open days, I remember those good old days where we used to meet face to face. Whoever I meet, I always say to them, when you receive information from the university about your application, read it thoroughly and make sure you respond to every aspect of it. On that note, we can move on to any questions that have been uploaded during the presentation.
Thank you, Bill and Manfrini, for that informative session. So first of all, we have a number of questions in the questions tab to do with contextual statements. So for example, is the contextual statement meant to cover all 10 images, or each image is supposed to have a contextual statement for itself?
From my experience, people have used both approaches. They've managed to do a statement that covers everything, and they've said for image 1, this is the contextual statement, image 2, this is the contextual statement, etc. But you've had to very clearly identify what is image 1, what is image 2, and they've done that very well. Others have put the moving image or the video in, and then directly underneath it, the contextual statement, and then the next image, contextual statement. So you can do either.
Thank you very much. Just to follow up, would you clarify, does the contextual statement count as an image or as a different set of entity?
That's a very good question. I believe it will be a separate entity. It will be one of the 10 images, I believe. Manfrini might be able to answer that better than myself.
Yeah, it will be as different because it's you use the text box basically from the option for the Pebble Pad. So that wouldn't count as an extra image, it would count as text. So it won't be included in your 10 image limit.
I may have made that a little bit less transparent. What Manfrini is saying is absolutely right. You have your 10 images and you can make a number of contextual statements without using any of your 10 images. So apologies for that. That was my confusion.
Thanks. Moving on to our next question. Would you say it might be beneficial to include written pieces of work, for example, short stories and such, in a portfolio?
Again, film practice prefer not to see the written pieces, but film and television welcome them, and that could include scripts. So please, again, just refer to the details. There's very precise and informative information on the website for film practice. One of the things they say is they'd rather not see scripts, etc. So please refer back to the website, have a look at that, and I think that will give you an indication. But for film and television, happy to see a script as a part of your portfolio application.
Great. So the next question is, we shall move on to clips and so forth. Can your 9 to 10 still images be portfolio boards? So when you say images, what do you mean, or do you mind explaining? Do you mean images in itself, or do you mean a compilation of images, or can there be a collage, for example? How would you go about that, for example, if you wanted to include more than one image on a board?
Yeah, no, I'll let Manfrini answer that if he doesn't mind, because Manfrini's had lots of experience of explaining that.
Of course, when we see, instead of saying the word image, see it as file. So let's just say 10 files. So if you want to have a layout of 2 images or 3 or even more, you can create that. The just definitely think of images as files, because you will have the option to show us, collages or of images. It could be if you want to show us your sketchbook and you want to use more than one image in one file. Yeah, definitely. So it won't limit. That's why I'm saying it's just really open on what you can do, because that option of having the digital aspect of it, that you can create different things. Just make sure that if you're using, for example, sketchbook images, make sure that they relate to the work that you are showing us. So if you have, for example, you have your film, and then underneath you can show us some stills, or you can show us some of your sketchbook. So see your portfolio as having chapters. So instead of just being randomly putting everything in there, and especially when something like film practice, it requires really, really specific things, think of it as chapters instead of just going and uploading sections like this is film, this is my stills, and these are my sketchbooks. So they all have a smooth narrative that goes through. So I would say think how you can do it differently when it comes to the digital aspect. So yeah, if you want to show a collage, definitely. And a sketchbook, but make sure that it relates. And if you're showing work from different artists, or make sure that you credit them.
Thank you for the answer. My next question has two parts to it. So the first part is, when you're including durational work, can you include multiple clips which are shorter, say 45 seconds to a minute, to add up to 3 minutes, or sort of it can be multiples of 3 minutes?
If I'm hearing the question correctly, are we talking about for film practice alone?
So we've got a question here in relation to both. So someone is asking in relation to film practice, and someone else is asking for film and TV.
Okay. Well, in the case of film practice, what they're asking for is 3 minutes of different pieces of durational work, if that's how you want to put it. So 4 45-second pieces would work well for film practice. Film and television, you could, for one of your uploads, you could put 4 45-second pieces as one upload, and then move on to your second image to put another 4 if you go 3 minutes. So I guess the answer is yes, you can, but don't turn it into a show reel. I think that's the important aspect of it. Make sure it's not presented as a show reel, because both teams have requested not to see show reels. Prini, do you have anything to add to that? Or was that?
To add, maybe not to add, but maybe make it simplify it a little bit. It's just when it comes to film practice, you need to have up to 3 minutes a video that shows your work, and that will, and as I said, it will include all your work when it comes to video and audio. So if you're working with both video and audio, we need to see that in one file, and up to 3, and that file needs to be 3 minutes long, up to 3 minutes long. If you don't have work that can be compiled up to 3 minutes long, then it's fine. Even if it's 2 minutes or 3 minutes, it's fine. We can still, you don't have to, as we said, you don't have to go and fill the whole 3 minutes of the work. It might give you a little bit more time to show one part of the scene. Again, remember to, if there's a scene and it goes into something else that is not as strong, for example, you start a scene and then it goes to a different scene from the same film. Maybe you want to edit it down and show the scene that is stronger, instead of just include that extra bit just to make it longer. But when it comes to film and television, again, you can show clips, as we say, from different films that you've created. If you have a short film that might be 3 minutes long, yeah, you can include all of it. If it's half an hour, maybe 2 to 3 minutes long, but that will be different files, different clips. That's the difference with the application for film and television and film practice.
Thank you for clarifying that. Just sort of off that question, can you show 2 sections of the same film within 3 minutes? So, for example, showing the opening scene or the sort of the middle or the closing scene, or would you suggest putting them separately?
That would be a nice use of your portfolio to show them together. Yeah, I'd be happy to see the beginning and then a short fade into the end section, or the 2 sections are related to each other. That would work very well.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is, do the image material have to be related to the durational work, or can they be from a different project that isn't submitted, providing there is contextual text going along with them?
If the context is there and you have very directly, in your contextual statement, you've very directly told us why you've chosen to do moving image and then move on to stills that are related, then the context will be honored. Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect, thank you for that. The next question is, for someone who is just starting to experience cinematography and filming and editing and so forth, and perhaps don't have the array of skills that they might have after coming out with a degree, is it acceptable to show those sort of skills in a portfolio and perhaps talk about it, how they could improve or how they envisage improving?
Absolutely, and lots of our applicants do that. Because remember, we don't expect for the finished product to turn up on our doorstep and come on the course. What we're hoping for is that you turn up with a very distinct brief, and that brief is that we want to come on with the skills that we've got now and develop. And it's all about taking your current skills, your current position, taking that forward. And if we can see your passion for doing that in the application, then the quality of the work is going to be mitigated, because we will see that although you maybe didn't get the technical aspects of it right, the experimentation within the work was perfect. You had a really good aim, your objectives were sound, but maybe the end product wasn't as good as you would have liked, and you may even tell us that in your application. You may say, I can see there's room for improvement in this respect. I think it goes back to what Lamprini was saying before about being honest to us and saying, you know, I can see the need for improvement. And as soon as you've pointed that out to us, what we're seeing there is somebody who's reflecting on their own practice, and that is something we very much encourage. So yeah, please feel free to do that.
Perfect. And now we shall move on to our last question. And it reads as, does Pebblepad have layer options when creating a portfolio, or do we have to create them ourselves when scanning and or photographing our work?
And over to Lamprini.
It doesn't have options for layout, so you have to create it before uploading your work. So that means if you have created something on Photoshop, for example, as a layout of images, then you export it in as a JPEG, and then you upload that image onto Pebblepad. So again, as I said, it's just think of it as a really, really simple blog. That it goes, you just scroll down to see the whole work, and we can click on an image and it will pop up as a gallery kind of thing, and then we can see your work. So just think of this when you're uploading your work. You have to create, you know, if it's a layout of images, or something else. Just think of it as you're uploading your finished files up to a website, for example. So that's the only thing that you can't do on Pebblebed. But you can change, as I said, it doesn't have filters that you can use. It's just you upload the files as they are, and you can use text to explain and tell us about your work. Hope that was okay.
Thank you very much for that response. Okay, well, thank you very much everyone for joining us, and thank you Bill and Lambrini for such an informative session. Before we sign off, Bill, Lambrini, is there anything you'd like to add?
Of course, thank you to everybody who attended and asked us questions and listened to our presentation. We hope it was helpful, obviously.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us today. And I just want to say, as I say to everyone, it's a lot easier than you think it is. And if you can start now, just putting things together, do it. Talk to friends and family, see how they see your portfolio. And if they get the idea, if they understand it, then it will definitely, come to us as something that we can see that yourself. The opportunity of you coming into college and what you can create, and just make sure that enjoy the process, because I know it's stressful, but it's a fun process, I promise. So that's for me as well.
Thank you very much. Well, best of luck, guys, putting your portfolios together. We look forward to reviewing them, and we also look forward to welcoming you next autumn. Best of luck, and I shall be ending the webinar now. Bye-bye for now.